All right. What is up, guys? And welcome back to TorqueTalks. We have another one coming to you from Kyle's basement. And this time I have Mr. Jaden Anderson of Dubsurd.
Representing Kansas. How's it going, everybody? As he said, my name is Jaden Anderson. I am 20 years old. I'm from Kansas City, and I am the co-owner of Dubsurd Tricking.
Yeah, when did you guys start Dubsurd?
Dubsurd started as not really as a company or a brand, but just kind of as a name in 2014. So what it really started out as was a Facebook group, like a private Facebook group for just like Kansas City area trickers to let each other know when sessions were and open gyms that they were going to and whatnot. And then I think sometime it was either late 2015 or like early 2016, we decided, we can market this a little bit. There's not really a public tricking scene in Kansas City, so we can definitely, given Kansas's history in the tricking community with Michael Guthrie, the homie, by the way, shout out to him. We were like, let's do something with this. So we made we made an Instagram page called Dubsurd, @Dubsurd. Check it out on Instagram. Made the Instagram page and just kind of been rolling ever since. And this past year, last year on Labor Day weekend, we hosted our first gathering in Kansas City. It's going to happen again this Labor Day weekend. Then we started selling clothing, and we got a website, and our Instagram page is popping right now. So yeah.
Nice. So what are the goals with that? Like, because obviously it doesn't sound like you started with any, but do you have some now of like where you see it trying to go, or just like what aspects of tricking you want to like help out?
So really, I think our kind of at least short-term goal right now is to really kind of catch up with other tricking brands as far as like our position within the community. We really want to start kind of shift our main income focus to clothing, especially. So we've already been setting up some stuff for that. And then I think really we just want to be a staple in the tricking community, which we've already kind of garnered a lot of clout in that respect.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you guys have just a monsters on your team, and Mike is such a staple in the community that whatever he aligns himself with, people pay attention to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's awesome. So how did the first year's event go? Because that was your first gathering that you threw, right?
Yeah. So that was the first tricking gathering in Kansas in 7 years, because the last one was KTG
3.
KTG 3, which was in 2011.
Was it in 11?
I think so.
I think it was 12 because I went to that one.
Okay.
It was either 12 or it could have been 13, but it had been a while.
More than 5+ years since the last Kansas tricking gathering.
Yeah, that's so wild.
But yeah, this one last year is the first one we had under the name of Dubsurd. And it went great. I mean, so much better than we even could have expected. It wasn't huge. I think we had like somewhere around 60 guests.
That's pretty big for a first year event.
But it was a lot bigger than we expected it to be. Everything went super smooth. Like there was a couple little like maybe time conflicts or something like that, but we were all very, very satisfied and happy about how it turned out, and we're hoping this year is even bigger and smoother.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so like, how have you seen the Kansas community grow over the last couple of years? Because you've been tricking for how long now?
I've only been tricking for 4 years, but I did like parkour and free running for about 2 years before that, and then just extreme sports and stuff all my life. But even just in the past 4 years, it hasn't grown super big. But the community is definitely a lot tighter. So back when Dubsurd was just that Facebook group, I mean, we never like talked to each other or hung out outside of tricking or, message each other on Facebook or whatever. It was like we just saw each other at sessions and that was about it. But now, I mean, we're a family. We're in my opinion the tightest knit tricking group just within ourselves that I've ever seen or been a part of. But it has grown as far as just numbers a little bit, because I think, when I first started tricking, really the only group of trickers that I consistently trained with was, probably me, Ben Hill, Price Weekly, Jake Arnold, Tim Aiken, and Michael. So about 5 or 6 of us that consistently trained. And then over the years, we just kind of slowly started getting our name out there. We would just show up to random open gyms all around the city, and people would show up. So now there's a pretty decent sized community in Lawrence, Kansas, which, if you don't know what that is, that's where KU is. So it's a kind of a college town about 45 minutes west of Kansas City. That's where the Quad Court gym is. If you know, you probably know.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, if you know, you know. If you don't know, go listen to another podcast. No, I'm kidding. But there's a pretty decent group there of kids that go to college at KU. Probably about 5 or 6 of them that train at least during the school year. During the summer, it's a little slower because they're back home or wherever. But it's not huge, but very, very tight knit.
But so you guys spent a lot of time going to just random open gyms to sort of collect members.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, and that really wasn't even the intention per se. It was just like kind of going around and let's see where these places take us. We'll go to different open gyms and see if we meet people. We can.
Do you have a favorite floor?
Gosh, favorite floor.
Like just from your local trainings.
Probably.
Like, what's the go-to spot where you're like, yo, if Session's there this week, I'm going in?
Definitely be Edge, which is where we've had Dubsurd gathering. Their floor is definitely my favorite out of all of them. There's some that I go through phases where it's like I like one floor better than the other for whatever reason. But all around, Edge Gymnastics, their floor is the best in my opinion.
What do you think is like special about it? Like, what's different from like some of the other floors that you've trained on that you're just like, I kind of like that?
It has kind of all the good properties that the other floor has, maybe not to the extent that they do. It's like, how do I say it? It's like a jack of all trades floor, kind of. So it's like it's not the best in any particular area, I would say, but it's pretty good in every aspect. So it's got good grip. It's firm enough to where you're not going to roll your ankle, but it's also soft enough to where if you take it bail, it's not going to hurt. The texture, I love the texture because I can grip on it in socks even, but it's not like abrasive. And then I've never bottomed it out either. So that's an important one for joints and whatnot.
Nice. Does everyone else train really hard on that floor as well?
Yeah.
Is that like everyone's sort of go-to session?
Yeah, I would say so. For a while, it was LGA, which is the one in Lawrence, the Quad Court gym, back in like 2016 when you name it, Mike Sampler. We were training there pretty hard. That was where the vibes were. But then in the past like year and a half, 2 years, Edge has been the spot that we all throw down. It's definitely my favorite place to trick, just because that was the first gymnastics gym that I ever went to, and the first place I ever tricked or did movement stuff. So I consider it my home gym. Definitely, and it's just always had the vibes since then.
Do you guys ever post on your Instagram where you're sessioning at, like to try and drive locals to like, yo, come hit us up? Because like Colorado Tricking has a page that Kerwood runs and a couple other people have access to where we try and like put out like, hey, yo, tonight's session is at, this gym down in Colorado Springs, or like up here in, Denver, we're doing like an 8 to 10 session and there's going to be some trickers coming through, or like, especially if there's like someone visiting, we try and like, we have the Colorado Tricking Facebook group as well as the, like an Instagram chat that we can like let people know in. And then they also post it on the page just to sort of help that community grow a little bit. And it's cool because every now and then you'll see someone that you've never met before and they're like, yeah, I've been training for like a year, but I didn't even know you guys were down here. Yeah. And they come find you and, start training with you. And it's just, the community gets to grow out a little bit more.
Yeah, we don't really do that too often. I think it's just because our community isn't nearly as big as Colorado's tricking community. So most of the time, we just have like a couple like group chats on Snapchat that we like tell everybody where we're sessioning, or even there have been a couple people that have just been like stopping through Kansas City for whatever reason, and like they might message us on Dubsurd's Instagram or something like that and say, yo, I'm coming through Kansas City, what's the move? And then we'll add them to like the Snapchat group. Yeah. And there have been a couple that have like just kind of stuck around. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, we had that in one of our groups in like a Facebook group a couple years ago where you would add people when they came to town just so they could get in touch with everyone, and then they just never got taken out of the group. And so like 3 years later, like you post something about like, yo, sessions tonight, and then like all these California kids are like, I'll be there. Yeah, that's how it's like, you're not gonna be there.
That's funny. And then we've got a recent development in Dubsurd's empire. We have the Empire, man. We're expanding. So we just initiated Dubsurd East, which is the St. Louis tricking community. It was called Motrix previously, but on the way to Neo in the car, we decided that it is now Dubsurd East, since we're all such close homies with everybody there. We got a lot of transplants from St. Louis and Kansas City. So like Price and like Josh Ladovich is from St. Louis, and he lives in Lawrence for school. But we're all such tight knit with them, and we road trip to Neo every year with all of them, and so we're like, yeah, let's just make it Dubsurd East. We can mutually assist each other with that. So go check them out, Dubsurd_East on Instagram.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that is really cool. Expanding out that community, because like Colorado has its own like little mini communities, but everyone still falls under this like Colorado Tricker banner. And that's definitely something that we wanted to happen after some of the previous brands that a lot of people associated themselves with didn't stick around as long as we wanted to. Mm-hmm. And there was sort of some fallout with like people not feeling like they were a part of the community anymore because that brand was no longer around. And so this rebranding over the last couple of years to Colorado Tricking has been, it's been nice because it's a much wider net to where like Torque and Pikes Peak and Meraki and Air State and Fort Collins people and the Boulder community, and like we have all of these different, Mile High Goon Squad, like all these different smaller teams and groups that all consider themselves part of Colorado Tricking. Yeah. And so, it's nice to have that sort of expansion out, even though it's not the people that you see every single week.
Yeah, that's kind of how really I want to kind of do it more with Dubsurd. So, we started in Kansas City, now we got Dubsurd East there, but we've got people that we consider Dubsurd team members in several different places. Like, for example, Cody Sanders in Chicago. He's one of the homies. He's definitely Dubsurd. So, could see Dubsurd. I don't know. Would that be Dubsurd Chi-Town? Nah.
The Windy Dubsurd.
Yeah. The Windy Dubs.
Windy Dubs. I like it. No. So I'll ask you a question that I asked Kyle and just leave it up to your interpretation. But like, what do you think about the current state of tricking?
I think tricking is in a really good position right now. A lot of people kind of complain about maybe where they think tricking is, or what they think it's growing into, or they think it might be growing in an unhealthy way. I disagree with that. I think tricking is growing in the best way that it really could be, because I think back to a couple years ago, and think to the beginning of some of these brands and stuff, like the very beginning of Plan Zero or the very beginning of Adrenaline, and what we all thought it might end up like. And I've learned that you can't put too much faith in your own expectations of where something is going to go, because it's probably not going to end up how you think it is, and you're probably going to be disappointed. So you really just kind of have to go with the flow, so to speak. And I think looking back, maybe my expectations for a lot of where tricking has gone hasn't turned out how I thought it would be. But looking back, I think that the route that it has taken has been the best route, So I think tricking right now is in a good place. Tricking is, we're all kind of working together, thinking about ways that we can grow the sport in a healthy manner. We've tried a lot of things that haven't worked well, and we've determined that it hasn't worked well, and then we move on. And there's still not really any animosity between trickers. So I'm proud of tricking as a sport, definitely.
Yeah, I think, and that's pretty much the sentiment that Kyle, echoed as well, is like, I think we're in a really great spot. And yes, there's a lot that has happened that maybe people didn't agree with at first, but as we've seen how it plays out, you get to put your 2 cents in there, and then the community gets to really have a huge say in things, and like, whether or not an event gets supported after it makes its first mistake.
Yeah.
And, how, like, what does it do to try and rectify the mistakes that it does make? Because every event in its first couple years is going to have some mistakes that happen. It's just the nature of the game.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I feel like the biggest beefs that have arisen in the tricking community have come as a result of whoever kind of caused it not communicating with the community before they tried whatever they were trying.
Right.
And
it's difficult because you want to share your ideas with people, but you also want to just execute on your ideas and, not let someone else have the opportunity to sweep it out from under your feet.
Yeah.
So people get nervous about like sharing their concepts and like their plans with people because they're like, well, if I share it with that person, like I think my idea is really good and that person will take it. And I've always said like, I'm okay with sharing my ideas with people because if that person does it better than me, they did it better than me.
Yeah.
The end. Like they executed it better. Like it was my idea and it was fantastic, but they had something that I didn't have. And I either need to be okay with that or develop that thing within myself so that I can, go out and accomplish that thing.
Absolutely.
And, so it's difficult because, not everyone thinks in that way and people, they want to keep their good ideas close to the chest, but without that communication, when you just drop something on a community, if the community doesn't like know what the intention is behind it and like where you're coming from, it's going to be difficult to get that whole community behind you.
Definitely.
Luckily Andrew Court has proved himself as a person, and just like, there's no doubt in my mind that kid loves tricking and that he's doing what he's doing out of a pure love and respect for tricking and what it means to him and what it means to so many others. The question is, how is he going to stand up against the people who are funding this when it comes to, because there's going to be a point at which he's going to have to say no to something because it doesn't align with what tricking is and what tricking needs.
There's going to be a conflict of interest at some point.
And he needs to be strong enough to be like, hey, this is my line in the sand. And, I've told people before, like, we used to have some people who were involved in Torque on the back end that were potential investors. And, we didn't take money from them because when we started discussing certain things, they were like, okay, well, we're going to do it this way. We had to constantly be like, no, this is a line in the sand. Like, if you continue down that road, we're going to go our separate ways. And this isn't going to keep happening. And those people are no longer a part of Torque because like we know what tricking means to us and the opportunity for getting some financial gains does not outweigh, the sacrifices that we would have had to make in those areas for like what tricking means to us and what we're trying to help encourage within the tricking community and like pushing those ideas and the tools that tricking gives us because of the way it is, that it might not communicate in the same way if a bunch of people come in and change what tricking is. Yeah. And I honestly, I don't think that they can. But it's that fear that drives people's reaction is like people are afraid of other people changing tricking in that way. But like you said,
it's not going to change.
It's the culture of all of the trickers that make the culture, each individual person, their say really does matter because when they put their opinion out there, other trickers hear it and they think about it and they're like, you know what? Maybe Unleashed is a good thing, or, maybe that event wasn't a good thing when I thought it sort of was going to be. Yeah. And, but it's only through that dialogue and that discussion where you can see people's different perspectives on it that we can actually get to a point where like we know what tricking culture really is. Yeah. Definitely. Because it's just an emergent property of the behavior that people are doing. Like the gatherings that happen, the reason that they keep changing in the way they change is because when someone did it that particular way in the past, a bunch of people went back home and they talked that gathering up.
Yeah.
And they were like, yo, this was so sweet. And like, I really love this one part where like we went to the salt flats, or like Neo had these tents, or, you know, whatever the factor was that made that event special.
Yeah.
When people go back home and they start talking about that, other events pick up those things for, they're like, yeah, that was a good idea. We should do something like that at our event. Or like, we should definitely make sure we have food, and, you know, definitely make sure we have this, and it's just, that's how that progress happens. Because I mean, when it started, like,
the biggest promotion for your brand doesn't come until after your first event.
Yeah.
Because, you know, because that's kind of a lot of stuff. Even Mike says this sometimes, where like, he doesn't want to go to a first event of anything, because it could be very hit or miss, and it's like, okay, let's wait and see how it turned out for those people that went, and then we'll go. And that's even how we kind of feel about Dubsurd. It's like, we hosted our first event, a lot of people came out, and it was great. Everybody had a great time, went super smooth. So now this second year, this is when we get on the ball, you know, and make it as best as we can after everything that we've learned from it, you know.
Oh, and that's definitely how it goes. Like, after our first event, we had people like reaching out to us because we released some footage, and they were like, hey, we're like 4 hours away, why didn't you invite us? And it was like, oh, we were just throwing this small thing to see if we could even throw something first. Okay, I guess we can open it up to more people. And then like, over the years, it's changed and evolved into a different thing. And, you know, now as it's grown, and like the tricking community has grown, and there's just all of these different gatherings, like Torque has become one of those more like old school style, chill, hang out with your friends gatherings than it is like go hard and do all of the, you know, mega tricks, you know, which is like, you need each of those different facets.
Yeah. Every gathering can't be a Neo.
Yeah,
you know,
no, you'd just be exhausted.
I know, and then at the same time, every gathering can't be a TSG,
right? Because
or
it
Tribox
needs,
House Camp, or whatever.
Yeah, you need those differences that really make each event individual, and that's what's cool is like when you go to each different community. And like wherever you go to a gathering, there's some community there, even if it's small.
Oh, for sure.
There's some, you know, people that are supporting that event, and making it happen in the first place. And you get to see what their culture is like, and, you know, pick up on like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know you guys did it like that. Or like you realize like, wait, you guys won't drive like 30 minutes to session with each other? Like that's crazy. And, you know, like we're used to driving like 45 minutes to meet up with other people, and like we do that all the time. But now we get to like carry that influence into them. And like I bet there's a couple of kids that after talking to us and realizing like, oh, 45 minutes is actually not that long of a drive to session with your closest friends. You know, they might start coming out, and that community can grow a little bit more.
Definitely.
So if you have a small community, I definitely recommend hosting an event and reaching out to some trickers that you know, and just being like, hey guys, we're going to do this thing, come through and like bring some people. Because that's how it starts. And that's, it always invigorates a community to have a bunch of trickers come and like participate in your local community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when they leave, there's just like this extra excitement that the community has, because they're like looking forward to the next time they get to do that.
And even outside of gatherings or specific events, like if you live a couple hours away from another tricking community, go to an open gym and chill with them one night.
Right.
Like that's happened a couple times. Like, you know, like a bunch of us will go to, you know, St. Louis for a night or two and hang out with them, and vice versa. Or like there was one time, like all the trickers from, where is it? Des Moines, Iowa, which is like 3 hours away, came down and had a session with us one night. Like Brandon Davis and Paul Tong and all them came down, and yeah, stuff like that. It's a day trip or whatever. It's not super hard to do, but
when I was on the East Coast, we used to do stuff like that all the time, where we'd meet up with like Gabby and the DMV cats, and then, you know, they would come down to like little mini gatherings in like North Carolina or South Carolina that we would go to. And like sometimes it was just like a small session with like 20, 25 people. And like those were the best. Like they were much fun. And, you know, then afterwards, you know, people are just hanging out in the parking lot, and it's like, it's not even an official gathering. It's just like
going to Denny's.
Trickers getting together and then grabbing food, and it's so great. I just love tricking.
And hang out with your tricker friends outside of tricking.
Yeah.
Tricking doesn't have to be your only creative outlet with your tricking friends. Go make music or make videos with them. Go to concerts with them and stuff, you know?
Yeah, and talk about shit. Like, that's something else.
Yeah.
Like,
do podcasts.
Yeah, trickers are some of the most interesting people to talk to, I've found, because they just think about the world in different ways. And like each tricker thinks about it in like a slightly different way because of the way they've come to it. And like tricking gives them tools that makes them, you know, put things together differently, because you realize like, oh, wait a second, this one move has all these variations and can be comboed in all these different ways. And then you're like, wait a second, life is kind of like that, you know, like
definitely.
I should start treating my life like a tricking combo, and like you start to get to use those things. And then also trickers are into some cool shit.
For real.
Know? Like people will read about the weirdest things, and like we've got trickers who are like physical therapists and can tell you all kinds of things about like how to stretch your body properly. We've got people who know all kinds of shit about like aliens and ancient pyramids. We've got people who know about like neuroscience, and there's just like
we've got
everybody. We've got everybody in tricking.
For real.
And it's all kinds of people too, you know, like different, like you got like emo kids and skater kids and, you know, like the band geeks, and like it's just anybody can come into tricking from any facet. And once they fall in love with tricking, the tricking community also sort of falls in love with that person.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to say is like, there's so much, you know, diversity within tricking, but it's funny how in a way it all kind of disappears at the session. Like you still get hints of it,
right?
Obviously, like in the way that their tricking style is, or just how you're talking to them about combos or whatever. But at the end of it, we're all trickers, and that's all something that's something we all have in common, you know. So if you have like a dispute with some tricker about like a, you know, religion or something like that, that's gone at the session. Nobody cares, you know. You see somebody throw gainer switch swing trip, and he's he's an atheist and you're a Christian. No one cares. This is tricking.
Right? It's like, wow, doesn't matter where that came from. That was a miracle.
Yeah.
You know, like the atheist is saying that. You know, they're like, that was incredible. Like it's one of those things, because that's not the point of conversation at the session. You know, it's like you're not debating the philosophical origins of everything. You're just training. And like what both of you are doing on the floor is a language that you can both speak.
Yeah.
And, you know, like when someone does a move and you see something about it that you're like, oh, that's cool. I could incorporate that into my combo. And then you do your combo with the move that they just did. And like, then they see that and they're like, oh, I've never tried that combo. Let me try that. And then it's just like this back and forth where you just have a great time sort of playing with someone that, you know, if you met on the street and just like started talking to, you might not have gotten along with them, but because you have that interaction first, then afterwards you find different topics that you can talk about and like get along on, even if there is like some fundamental divides.
Yeah. That's how we save the world.
For real though. Like I've been talking to people about like why tricking could save the world for years, you know, because it's just this incredible thing where it's like we have trickers that come together from like warring nations.
Yeah.
And they come to like Hooked and to like different events overseas where, you know, both of them are on neutral ground where it's like neither of their countries are at war there. And like, you'll see them chilling and just hanging out, and it's like if they were back in home, both of them have to be in military, and like they have to go out and like on the front lines like fight against each other. But when they come to this gathering where it's just tricking, it's all love, and it's all just like, whoa, that person is incredible.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are some people who are just like, you're going to find an asshole anywhere you go.
Oh, definitely.
And so like, I'm sure there's some, you know, anomalies, but like, it's definitely not the rule that, you know, most trickers are, you know, douchey people. Like in general, trickers are just, they're just trying to trick and hang out and like find people that appreciate the things that they appreciate about.
Yeah, nobody's forcing trickers to get along with each other at gatherings, but they do anyways.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting how easy it is to bounce from click to click. You know, like everyone, there's still cliques at a gathering where it's like, oh, those 4 or 5 people have been hanging out at events for the last 4 or 5 years with each other. So like they're super tight, but like you can still walk up into that group and just introduce yourself and start talking.
Yeah.
And no one like stares at you and is like, what are you doing there? It's just like, oh, what's up? Yeah, my name's Dylan. Like, oh, what's your name? Oh, cool. And then like we go back to the conversation and then that person gets to be a part of that conversation now. And like that's definitely not something that I got to experience anywhere before tricking.
Oh, no way.
And I definitely hope that other communities in sports have this, but it's not something that I've personally found.
Yeah, because I mean, I've been into a lot of different extreme sports and stuff. Like I started skateboarding and stuff when I was like 9 or 10, and then I moved on to like BMX and then parkour and then tricking. And really none of those things. I mean, I wasn't like as invested in any of those things as I am tricking.
Same.
But still, even with the little bit that I was doing, I didn't see the kind of camaraderie that we have as trickers. And it makes me wonder, like, in the future of tricking, if later generations of trickers will have that same tight knit thing. Because you know, like you know, with parkour, back in whenever parkour was started, you had like Daniel Ilabaka and like a few other guys, and they were like super tight knit brothers, and it grew a little bit, and the culture was super tight knit until it hit mainstream, and now it's like everybody knows what parkour is, and you jump off a ledge and like, oh, you're doing parkour, huh?
Yeah, and it's just it's overplayed in the mainstream by people who don't understand it.
Yeah,
so
like it makes me wonder if in 20 years. If trickers will be able to, let me preface this with like, right now I have 100% confidence that I could go anywhere in the world with trickers, and I could be like, yo, I need a place to stay for the night. Can anybody help me out? And there's somebody would, to an extent, obviously,
right.
But the culture
within like the gathering community, we'll say that maybe not like just like trickers anywhere, but within the gathering culture and like the trickers that are actively going out to events and like, they're always willing because they've been traveling before and they've had people open their house up to them. And like that comes back around.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, you think of like Ben Covey from France. I mean, he traveled the world for like a year or two just staying with trickers.
Oh yeah, and he stayed with us for a while.
Yeah, and he's still alive. But it makes me wonder if like in later generations of trickers if they'll still be able to do that. I think they will be, just because of the nature of tricking. But yeah,
well, I mean, that was I think the second time that I saw Mike. Like, I met him once before then, but Rudy and I were just on our way out to the HKPK event in, 2012. And we just, hit him up and we're like, hey, we're on this crazy-ass road trip where we're literally driving out to Las Vegas from all the way on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And, can we stay at your place? And they're just like, yeah, that's totally fine. And when we showed up, Mike had just woken up and he came out and just Gumby triple cork on the grass and he was fresh out of the shower.
That's funny. Was this at Mike and Tommy Teague's house? Or?
No, this was way back. This I believe was when he was staying with Brittany's family.
Okay.
Actually, no, that was the second or third time we went to visit him. The first time he was actually still at his house.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. He was still at his parents' house. So it was right outside his, in that side yard of his parents' house.
Yeah.
That's where he did the
nice.
Gumby. And we were just like, what? It's insane. I think Rudy tried to trick throw a couple of tricks, but we had just driven 16 hours from Virginia. So he was trashed.
That's funny.
Let's see. What time is it? What time you got to get to that flight tonight? Because you're flying out of Utah back to Kansas.
Yep, flying back at 8:30, and it's now 5:40.
Okay. Oh, it's 5:40 right now.
Oh, it's 5:40. That's tricking.
That's tricking. That's
tricking lingo.
Let's see. What was the other thing that I wanted to ask you about that we were talking about before? I don't think we didn't talk about Unleash too much. I think you mentioned it a little bit as far as first year events, but what are your thoughts in general on that type of an event?
I think that's a better way to pay trickers. I don't know. I totally support Unleashed. I think it's a great idea. I just personally want to wait and see how it turns out.
That's fair.
Kind of like I was, saying before with like going to second year events or whatever. The only thing that I would be kind of concerned about with Unleashed is getting trickers to like pay the entry fee or whatever, or like add to the pot, because trickers, as you all know, are poor and don't like spending money if they don't need to. And with $500-$600 buy-in, we just have to see what happens. I mean, I know there's already a lot of people like signed up for it, and there's obviously potential for people to make a huge profit off of this. So that's the only thing that I would be kind of concerned about if I was going. Is I paid $500 to get there or whatever.
Yeah,
and then
all this money
and then leave empty-handed. But I mean, that's people know that going into Unleashed. So I think, but yeah, if all goes according to plan, then I think it'd be great. It'd be a great way to pay trickers.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It has its potential, and only time will tell whether or not it's successful.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest concern I have is like, what's the motive of the person who's funding this?
Mm-hmm.
Like what's their connection and their affiliation with tricking? What's like, how do they feel about it? Do they love tricking? Or is this a lucrative avenue that they see?
Yeah,
because
I know that
I'll tell you, it's not as lucrative as you think.
Yeah, I know the people funding it, funding Unleashed this year, have done a lot of funding for martial arts events, so they got that in common, which I like a lot.
They have some experience.
Yeah, especially with something. I mean, tricking isn't martial arts anymore, but
it grew out of that.
So there's that common ground, which I like a lot. If this was just like some brand that funds like football tournaments or something like that,
right?
I would be a lot more.
Well, that's a ball sport. That's not really the individual versus themselves sort of thing.
Definitely. And then I know that Andrew has like a personal relationship with the people funding it. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. But like you said earlier, it would just come down to, if there is a conflict of interest, would Andrew take the side of tricking? Which I think he totally would.
I think he would as well. And I think he would be willing to cut ties if it came to it. And, hopefully this company that is backing him and the partners that he has involved do have its best interest at heart,
Mm-hmm.
and are just trying to make an event that is beneficial for tricking. Obviously they want to make some money, and like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't we fucking all?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that the dream, is to be able to do this as your means of income, and like being able to put everything you have into it instead of just sort of the side things.
Yeah. And I used to hold the opinion that the second that you add money to the equation, then it's immediately corrupted, which for some things may be true. I don't think that'll be a problem with tricking anymore, because somebody made the talking about adrenaline and then paying trickers, and going the whole route of quote professional tricking. Like somebody in defense of them made the connection with skateboarding and saying there's plenty of professional skaters right now that get paid money to go to the X Games or whatever. But then there's still skaters at every skate park that just do it because they love skateboarding. Exactly. And they don't need money. And I don't see any reason why tricking should be different than that. But then, tricking would be different than that, I think, though, because trickers would be making money out of a love for tricking, not out of a love for money. Because I think tricking fundamentally is different than any other sport that I've seen. So
I definitely agree with that. Yeah. Because I mean, you don't very often, at least I never encountered these types of skateboarders
mm-hmm.
that were like, oh yeah, no, we're getting ready to go up to this, skate park and like make sure that we get to train with these guys up in this town, and then we're gonna go and hit up this place, and like you saw that in like the movie Grind, and that was like it, but it's like,
like we're not gonna come to your local skate park unless you pay us to show up,
right?
Like that, I've never seen that.
But like, within tricking, it's like people have always like just spent their own money and gone out of their way to like, oh no, we never get to go train with those people, and like this guy's gonna be there. Let's go and like meet him and like, you know, like talk to these people and like make new friends and hopefully learn some new tricks.
Yeah. Yep. Tricking has always been the motivation for trickers.
It's wild. It's wild how that happens. How like we come into it and it just sucks you up, and then once you're in it, like it just becomes tricking is the thing that pushes you forward. And like even when you get an injury or like you spend all your money or you know your car breaks down at a gathering, it's still like
that's a relevant situation to us right now.
Yeah. So still waiting on that phone call. What's great too is these are probably going to be released not on the same day. So there's going to be like 3 podcasts and people are going to be like, wow, damn, he's been waiting on this car for days.
It's been a week.
When really it's only been like 2 hours and it's just fresh on my mind. So I keep talking about it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you wanted to add? I think that's probably a good place to wrap up so we can get you packed up and headed over towards the airport. Any shout outs or final thoughts that you want to leave the listeners with? I'm sure you'll be back on one of these. You're only 9 hours away from us.
Yeah.
Come out to Colorado every now and then.
Yeah, definitely. This year's Dubsurd Gathering, the second one, Dubsurd Gathering, is August 30th to September 1st. The Monday after the gathering is Labor Day, so you don't have to go home on Sunday if you don't want to. Yeah, come out to that. It'll be tight. Go to dubsurd.com and you can pre-order or pre-register.
Yeah, definitely do that. Definitely pre-register if you are going.
Yeah.
You have no idea as a gathering host what it means to have a little bit of resources to go and get the food or to put a deposit down on something or rent speakers, or there's just so much more that you get to do when you have some funding ahead of time, because, you know, not everyone has, you know, a couple $100 laying around that they can front before the event starts.
Definitely. And even if you can't like actually pre-register because, you know, maybe you're waiting on that paycheck or whatever and you can't actually send money, you know, let the hosts know that you're going to come through so that we got at least a number idea.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that always is unfortunate is if you go strictly off the Facebook numbers, you never know what people are actually going to show up. Yeah. Because it might say like 50 or 75 people, but then only 20% of those show up.
Yeah.
But then like a bunch of people that didn't say they were going also show up.
Yeah.
And so...
I bet Area 51's thinking that right now.
Right? They're like, oh shit.
600,000 people according to Facebook.
It's over 1 million.
It's over 1 million now?
It's over a million marked as going now at the time of this recording.
That's funny.
Did you see the meme about the time traveler comes back and is like, you know, what are you doing this week? It's like, oh, I'm getting ready to storm Area 51. It's like, oh, is the Area 51 massacre this year?
That's funny. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it was a good one. Good luck to all those people running through Roscoe, Mexico towards that.
If a couple of you get cold feet while you're there, just come through to Dubsurd Gathering.
Yeah, is that the same day?
Oh, wait, no, it's totally not.
Because when is
Area 51's like in November or something like that?
Yeah, it's in a couple months. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, honestly,
it's going to be nothing. No one's going to show up, or there's just going to be like a bunch of people at the wrong location.
Yeah, I feel like there'll probably be a good number of people that'll show up, but it'll probably turn into like a music festival.
Right, it would just be Fire Fest all over again. Everyone's like, oh, we need food. We need food and water.
I need it.
Right? All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Hit up Dubsurd and go to their gathering.
Peace and love. Tricking will save the world.